A very good afternoon. Very good afternoon. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CCMA Web Talks. This is our series of webinars that we are undertaking, going through different topics of interest in the construction chemical industry. Today is our fourth webinar in series, and we are going to be talking a little bit about jointing systems and sealants and grouts in precast construction. So I'm Sunny Surlakar from SS Buildchem. I'm your host for today evening. So once again, let me welcome you all, and I'll also introduce you a bit to CCMA before we get started with our main topic of discussion for today. So, as you know, CCMA, that is the Construction Chemical Manufacturers Association, we started off about 10 years ago with the motto of building better together, which means what we intend to do is look into the proper or the correct application of the construction chemical systems, like, things like waterproofing, repairs, admixtures. There are grouts and tiling systems and protection systems, and I mean, you name it. So the correct application becomes very important, and that's what we're trying to achieve with this series of webinars. And also to know a little bit more about CCMA is that we are today represented by, I would say, most top companies. You can just see these companies on your screen right now. But these member companies represent, I would say, the most significant chunk of the construction chemical industry today, and we are all here together to make construction better. Here's a managing committee. So we have got a very able managing committee from the best known professionals in the field today. And with that, I'll introduce you a bit more on CCMA, and then we shall go ahead with today's program. So, firstly, welcome again to CCMA Web Talks 4, and we'll be talking more on sealants and jointing solutions for precast structures. So, once again, welcome, Mr. Pushpam Kumar, and Mr. Ritesh Singh from Sika would be introducing this topic to you today. And as a construction chemical industry, most of you are well aware with us. So we have a lot of different solutions in enhancing concrete, protecting concrete, finishing, repairing concrete, and so on. So everything from admixtures to waterproofing systems to repair systems, corrosion protection, bond coats, grouts, tiling systems, you name it, and we kind of make do with it. So like we say, the aim is to make construction better. Just here are a few next couple of slides are a bit about our aims and objectives. So what we are looking to do is basically address common issues relating to commerce and industry, especially relating to our industry. Education, of course, is one important part of it. Of course, promoting the growth of the CC industry, and as well as a forum to communicate with different government bodies, with other technical bodies such as BIS and BIS, other codal bodies, other professional bodies, and this is all what we do to do it in the instruction in the interest of construction to make it better. Of course, we work to organize a lot of workshops, conferences, lectures, and so on, because the knowledge sharing has to go. The correct kind of training has to be imparted, imparting continuous education both to our customers as well as to our members. So we look at both sides of information exchange over time. Of course, another very key aspect is that we want to regulate the conduct and code of practice in the industry. So basically, increase the quality levels, as you say, throughout the industry, and that is what we would be looking at. And I would say this web talks would be one of our engaging kind of medium to do something like that. So before we start off our presentations for today, just a few key announcements. Firstly, I would request you to keep your microphones on mute. Of course, we have done this, but in any case, if it turns on, just please turn it off, because it creates a disturbance to the other viewers. And also, in the interest of preserving bandwidth, I would request you to please turn off your cameras. Like, if you go to our view panel, you'll just see this camera icon. So just click it till you see this red line through it, like this. So just turn the camera off, so that we can like, the bandwidth utilization is better, and you should be able to see the slides more clearly. As far as questions go, so as the presentation progresses, we want you to send your questions. So if you just start up your chat box, you'll see one option called as chat. So just access your chat box and send your questions to CCMA webinars. It's maybe one of the two or three options that you will see. So just send all your questions to CCMA webinars and include your name, your organization, and whom are you addressing the question to. Okay. Just to give you a hint or what's coming up next is our next webinar would be coming up next month. It's in the middle of July, and we would be discussing a lot about migratory corrosion inhibitors and systems, PU systems for waterproofing. So again, look out for the announcements. Any further questions, please write to us at ccmawebinars@gmail.com. And I think with that, we can get our session started, and I'll hand over the baton to our first speaker for today, Mr. Pushpam Kumar. Pushpam?
Uh, Thank you, Sunny.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pushpam Kumar. I would be talking on grouts for precast, and Sunny, is my screen visible?
Yes, perfectly. You can start off.
Okay. Uh, as we discussed, today's topic is grouts and sealants for precast construction. I would be talking about grouts for precast construction, and my colleague Ritesh would be talking about sealants for precast construction. Uh, when we CCMA decided the topic, it was something which came that post-COVID situation. Precast definitely would be one of the most demanding sector because we definitely are going to face some manpower challenge, and precast would be one of the major way to take the construction to the next level. If you see the overall industry, precast industry would be growing to somewhere around 140 billion by 2022. And if you see, Asia Pacific is one of the major region where we have the growth coming in precast. So for precast, we have a lot of constructions going on, like building constructions, bridges, culverts, pipes, wind towers, various kind of retaining walls, railway sleepers, tunnel linings, like metros and all. You see a lot of tunnel linings are there. Various kind of storage tanks are being constructed with precast. So precast is a big industry. We would be talking about building construction today and the grouts requirement and the sealant requirements. In precast construction, we have various members like walls, floors, or column and beam. These members are constructed in a factory, and then it is transported to the site location. Like you can see these photographs, wherein these big panels are there, which are constructed at a very controlled environment in the factory, and then post construction or post curing, it is transported to the new location, the site location. At site, we have big capital equipment to handle these big panels, big cranes. The tower cranes are required, and a skilled manpower are required for handling these panels and for erecting these panels to the right locations. Once the panels are erected, a support function is provided to these panels, like the bracings are done, and then you can see the joints. All the joints are connected together because all these panels are independent. They have been placed with the help of cranes. The bracing has been done so that they are in position till the construction, and then the joints are fixed. These joints are very important because if you can see these photographs, if the joints are not fixed properly, it can lead to a serious failure. And these kind of serious damages are there in past where the joints were improper. There are various codes available. One of the code is ACI 550, which provides the guide for emulating cast in place detailing for seismic design of precast concrete structure. And this emulating detailing is basically defined as the connections between the precast member, so that the performance, the structural performance of these joints are equivalent to the conventionally designed cast in steel or monolithic structure. So this is very important that these panels are erected separately, but these are connected, And the expectations from the joints are this has to give the similar performance or better performance compared to the cast in situ structure or monolithic concrete structure. And these connections between the precast elements are done either by bolting or by welding or by grouting, depending upon the type of structure and the kind of criteria like suspect zones and other criteria. Uh, this is very important that we should understand that these joints and connections are two different things in precast structure. Joints are basically designed gap between the members. The members are arranged in such a way that they are connected to each other, but the joints, the main function of the joints are that one member should not transfer load to the other member. There is just a physical separation between the joints which is created by sealants. But connections are designed to transmit force. For example, if you see the frame structure, the column, beam, and slab, they transfer load from slab to beam, beam to column, and then column to foundation. So these are load transfer members, and the joints between these are called connections. There are various kind of connection. Like if you see the bottom sketchage, wherein the hollow core slab is connected to walls or beam or corbel, and these connections are grouted at later stage. These are at many of the locations, like first foundation to column. You can see here the foundation is there, and on the top we have the precast column which is connected with non-string grout. Then column to column, one column is erected and then another column is kept on the top, and these connecting rebars are there, and these ports are there, the preformed ports are there for injecting non-string grout. Similarly, the column to beam connection, the beam to slab connections, and slab to a staircase. Like these are the various member in precast structure which are connected to each other, and we call it connections. Some of the special kind of connections are grout filled splice. Like this is another kind of connections which is grout filled, and this is at various locations, like between column to column or between wall to wall, depending upon applications. You can see these photographs, like these are pre-installed connections, and these grout filled sleeves inside the concrete members panels, and when one is kept on the another one, it goes inside the splices, and then it is grouted. To explain, I have taken a small video which will give you a clear picture how this works. Like you can see this mechanical member when the rebar is connected, and these ports are pre-designed. And when one panel is kept on the another one, these sleeves are filled with grout. The grouts are getting filled, and when it starts coming from the another port, we pluck it. The sealing is done completely, and then the behavior is monolithic. So these are a special kind of connections in the precast members, which has now being used at various project sites. So you have seen all the various kind of joints and connections. So let us understand what is grout. Like if you see ASTM-C 1107, it has defined, if I've given the definition of grouts, but broadly, you will have to understand that grout is basically a load transfer material which is used to fill the gaps between the connections, so that the end behavior is like emulating detailings. Like it has to give the behavior of monolithic structure, and these grouts are made with the help of sand cements, the which binder, and a special kind of additive which makes the various kind of different kind of grouts. And at site we mix water to get the desired flowable consistency. ASTM-C 1107 has termed this as a non-shrink. and therein there are three grades. A is which is expansion before hardening, the B type grouts, which is expansion after hardening, and the C type, which is both expansion before hardening as well as after hardening. And then this code also gives the performance parameter, the various kind of test method for the grouts, and the reporting, like how the detail of the grout should be captured. Some of the properties of the grouts are like, first, it should be dual shrinkage in nature. The compressive strength should be high. It should be high flowable, because you have see all the connections where the grout has to flow. So flowability is one of the important parameter. These connections are for the long duration, like as same as the life of the building or structure. So creep resistance is one of the important parameter of these grouts. The grout should be dimensionally stable, so that when the load is increasing, there should not be any kind of dimensional instability in the grouts. The resistance to dynamic and seismic loading. These buildings are static in nature, but whenever you have seismic or expansion, contraction, or movement, definitely some dynamic forces are there. So the grout has to resistance to dynamic and seismic loads. Chemical resistance, of course, this is one of the important parameters, so that the grout does not get damaged at a later stage because of the chemical ingress in the structure, which we usually see in many of the project site. And anti-corrosive in nature, this is another aspect which is very important, because the reinforcements which are embedded inside these grouts should not get corroded. So these are some of the properties of the grout material. In general, we have seen that there is a practice that we only see the compressive strength, but I would say that is not the right way of looking at grout. First, we'll have to understand the purpose of grout. The grout first has to transfer the load, so it should have the ability to transfer the load, and second, it should completely fill the voids. The connections has to be completely filled. And when we talk about the load transfer, the effective bearing area should be high, because if the contact surface area is high, then only it would be able to transfer the load properly, and there should not be any kind of segregation or bleeding in the grout. When we see the term of filling the voids, once the void is filled, the grout has to give the performance of its shrinkage compensation, like expansion and compensation is one of the important part of the grout, so that at later stage, if there is any shrinkage, there would be void inside these connections. So the shrinkage should be as low as possible or minimal, so that there is no void created at the later stage. And the flow characteristic, because you have seen the joints, the grout has to flow from one point to the another point, and if the flow characteristic of the grout is not proper, possibly the grout will get blocked in between the connections. So these are some important parameters which we should definitely look into the grouts during the evaluation. And when we see all these requirements are getting fulfilled by the grout, then we can say that okay, all the performance parameters are getting achieved. Some important planning, because most of the project site we have seen the grouts and all are not taken care very seriously. This is my personal experience, but it needs a lot of planning, because first is the health and safety part. Second is the accessibility part, how we are going to accessible those locations. The time limit in case of the grouting, there should not be any kind of interruption. It should be non-interrupted grouting applications. The climatic condition, in case if you foresee that the temperature is going to increase or the rain is going to come, then definitely those kind of situations should be avoided. The amount of manpower, because these are volumetric work, so we need a good amount of manpower to handle those materials. Then the jointing applications, the metal consumption has to be calculated so that the uninterrupted routing can be done. The mixing procedures are very important, and that has to be well defined at the initial stage. The finishing part, how we are going to finish, because once the grouting is done, the cleaning has to be done, the finishing has to be done, so that the structure looks monolithic and there should not be any kind of spillage or any kind of mark of the grouting applications. Some application procedures. The first, the substrate has to be prepared. In case, because as you see that these these precast panels are constructed at factory. It is kept for long duration for curing. Then it is transported. So definitely during this period, till the time the joints are getting filled, the connections are getting filled, the surface become absorbent. So we have to ensure that these precast panels are in SSD condition during the grouting application, so that it does not suck water from the grout material. In case if the surface is highly absorbent and if the water is getting sucked, there would be problem at later stage. So cleaning and pre-wetting is one of the important part during the grouting application. The formwork applications has to be done properly. uh, in the previous photographs, you have seen that there are sleeves which are created for pouring grouts. So when we are doing the pre-wetting, there are chances that there would be water inside these sleeves. So that has to be cleaned, because in case if some standing water is there and if we are pouring grout, the end result would not be good. So excess water has to be removed. Mixing and pouring is another important aspect which we'll discuss later. The curing part, the treated structure has to be covered or protected. The curing has to be done as per the recommendation, and definitely the finishing part. And all the documents like quality control records has to be taken. Some essential equipment which is required during the grout is like hand tools, the measuring cylinder. This is something which is important because these grouts are having requirement of water, and the water should be pre-measured. uh, General practice where we see that the grouts are measured uh, on some volume like mug or something are getting used, but that is not the right way of measuring water. So measuring cylinder should be there so that the grout can be measured, the water content should be measured properly. The mixing equipment should be proper, and some hand tools like sponge or curing membranes should be there at the site. For mixing, either the paddle spindle or the drum mixer should be used. This is very important that the mix consistency of the grout should be proper. First, we should measure the water depending upon the recommendation from the manufacturer. The water, whatever required water is there, that should be 80% of the water should be kept inside the mixing jar or in the pan mixer. Then powder should be added to water, and then the mixing should be done. For initial 1 or 2 minutes should be mixed, and remaining water should be mixed after 1 or 2 minutes. Like 20% water which we keep, that should be mixed after 1 or 2 minutes of mixing. And then after complete mixing of 3 to 4 minutes, or depending upon recommendation, the mix consistency should be checked. Another important aspect, the mixing should not be done at a very high RPM, because in case if we are mixing at a very high RPM, there are chances that the air get entrapped, or if the spindle, if we are moving in upward and downward direction, there are chances the air will get entrapped in the grout, and the air bubbles are not good for the grout consistency. Some small pouring techniques, because these grouts has to flow, so we should create a desired pressure head so that the grout should flow with the gravity, and it should fill all the joints. The compressive strength of grout is uh, directly connected with the water powder ratio. So this is one of the chart which you can see, where if the water powder ratio is high, the compressive strength would be low. So this is inversely proportional. So we should always keep in mind that wherever we have to mix water, we should pre-measure, and we should ensure that excess amount of water is not getting added, because if excess amount of water would be added, there are possibility that the compressive strength of the grout will reduce and the end result would not be met. Another important aspect is the temperature influence, because this is also important parameter during the grouting. Usually we suggest the grouting should be done when the temperature is low, either in the morning hours or in the evening time, especially during the hot weather condition. So if you can see the end result, like if the temperature is high, like 35 degree or so, you can see that the initial strength gain would be high, but final strength gain would be relatively low. So the ideal condition is we should keep temperature as low as possible, so that the strength achievement over a period of time should be to the maximum level of the grout capacity. So temperature is one of the important aspect. The covering of those joints or curing of those joints are very, very important. Some on-site test which is required, which we should definitely do whenever we do this kind of precast grouting. One is the density, because this is something which is, these are the tests which are possible at site. Segregation and bleeding is one of the major challenge. So you will have to see that when the grout are getting poured, or when we are applying these grouts, there should not be any kind of bleeding on the surface, because this will lead to segregation, and then there would be problem in the end result. So this is one of the major challenge which we can see during the grouting application. There should not be any kind of bleeding uh, at site during application. Flow is very important aspect, especially for precast construction, because the flowability is would decide that whether the grout has reached to all the pockets or not. Very small test at site which can be done with the cup cone, wherein um, at 10-minute to 30-minute time we can see the result, how the spread is happening. You can see the graph here. At 10-minute it should give 295 to 300 or slightly higher than 300 This cup cone is having a size of, the top is 50 the bottom is 100 and the height is 70 So the cup cone is filled on the glass plate, and then after some time it is taken off, and then the spread is measured. So initial 10-minute spread should be close to 300, and after 30-minute it should slightly reduce, like 280 to 290, like this. The flow should be achieved. In case if the flow is not getting achieved, there are high chances that the grout would not flow properly and the joints would not get filled. Some compressive strength or the flexural strength measuring, you can follow any of the code, like if you see EN 196, which suggests 40 by 40 by 160 prism, which can be used for checking the compressive strength or flexural strength. Or we can follow ASTM-C 1107, which suggests to cast a cube of 50 by 50 to measure the compressive strength. And these compressive strengths should be checked at 1 day, 7 days, 14 days, and 28 days. Uh, in case if you have any kind of challenge like temperature influence, and if the temperature has influenced the grout strength, you can also keep some additional cubes so that the strength can be checked at later stage, like 56 degree or 66 days or 90 days, so that we can see what is the final strength gain of this grout material. This is one of the important slide. You should see that what kind of molds are being used. Like in case if it is 40 by 40 by 160, you can see the strength gain, and relatively you can see the other sizes, like 40 40 160 is suggested by EN 196, and some other molds if it is being used, you can see the variation, like 100 by 100 mold. Initially the result would be relatively low, but after 17 days the result would be very, very high. Similarly, if you see 150 by 150 mold, the initial result would be slightly high, but at later part you can see that the result strength gain is very high. So this is very important that we select the proper mold size, either 40 by 40 160 or 50 cube, for checking the strength. Effective bearing area is one of the important aspect, because in case if the contact surface area is poor, if the grout which is used to fill the jaw connections, if the contact surface area is less, there are very high chances that the grout would fail, like the load transfer would not be proper. So EN 1339 suggests that the minimum effective bearing area should be greater than 85%. In case if it is less, there are chances the load transfer would not be proper between the grouts. So this is another important test which can be done at site. Very small apparatus you can see on the left side, wherein we fill the grout in the pressure head and we lift this plate so that the grout flows inside the channel. This is covered with the acrylic sheet, and after curing, we can check the final property. Like you can see on the right hand side, the bottom one is 70% EVA, the middle one is 80% EVA, and the top one is 90% EVA. So you can yourself judge that which one is better. Definitely, the more contact surface area would be better for grout material to transfer the load from the panel to panel. Calculations of these grout, like when we start, we know that okay, this much of volume is there, like 0.5 cubic meter or 1 cubic meter volume has to be filled. So we need to calculate that how much of grout material is required, so that, as I said initially, the grout pouring should be uninterrupted. There should not be any kind of break in between the pouring. So that much of volume of grout material should be kept ready. Pre-batching should be done. The amount of water should be pre-batched, and then the grout mixing should be done. So here you can see the yield calculation, like the very simple calculation, the weight of powder plus the amount of water which is being added to this. The sum total is divided by the density of material. So the weight of powder, you have the how much of powder is being mixed. The recommended water powder ratio is there from the manufacturer, and the density is confirmed by the manufacturer. So depending upon these available details, we can calculate that what is the yield of one bag or one batch of grout, and then for 1 cubic meter or the volume required to fill these grouts, we can decide that this much of bag would be required to fill these gaps. So this is very basic calculation, but this would help to ensure the grout mixing and pouring is uninterrupted. So some basic calculations like yield calculation or consumption calculation, that how much of grout metal would be required, should be done in advance, so that we have complete detail and the complete material at site for mixing and pouring. So this is all from my side on grouts. I would like to hand over to my colleague Ritesh.
Thank you very much, Pushpam.
Yeah,
So if I can just request you to stop your screen share.
yeah,
And the second part, I think, would be covering more on the sealants for precast construction. So I think I
yeah.
can request Ritesh to get on with the presentation. Over to you, Ritesh.
Thank you, Pushpam. So my colleague Pushpam has spoken about the grout in precast joint, which helps in achieving the overall structural stability, integrity, and transmitting a load. I'll be talking about the sealant in the precast joint, which will help in arresting the leakages.
Ritesh, if I can just request you to go a bit slower because your voice is sort of breaking up. So it might just help a little bit. Go slightly slower, and yeah, that's it. I think you can
Yeah.
go ahead.
Without the intention of offending anyone, when we visit the site or the client office or the builder, we often come across following statement. The design life of precast structure is 50 plus years. What is life expectancy of a sealant? Someone not having a good experience with the precast structure, they would be of opinion that the precast structure leaks. Some people plan to seal the precast joints with mortar. Then someone asks, can we seal to submarine standard to keep all water out? And from the side or the contractor side, is there any guide on applying a sealant? My intention is to answer all these queries in my presentation. We need to acknowledge following fact that most of the precast elements are manufactured off-site, but the critical waterproofing sealing is done on-site and not so ideal conditions. And the sealing is further aggravated if there is a wrong joint design, wrong material selection, and wrong application. Now, why joints in building? Simple, to allow movements. There would be movement due to thermal expansion. The arrow in the indicates the direction of the movement.
Oh,
You change the temperature,
Ritesh, I
there will
think
be change in the element size,
Ritesh,
and
requested.
there would be a movement towards the joint. Hello. Sunny, hello.
Your voice is actually breaking up quite a bit, and also the screen is kind of transitioning very slowly. It's not keeping up with what you're speaking.
I'll
Can you
change the
check?
internet connection. Can you
Yeah,
give me 2 minutes?
yeah, no problem. Please check the connectivity at your end and just can go ahead.
So sorry for the glitch. Okay. Now, the another reason for providing joints in building is to accommodate movements due to wind. Tall buildings are exposed to strong winds. A Petronas tower having a height of 52 meters, it moves up to 2 meters at the top. So in the picture you can see the bridge connecting the two towers, it is not fixed. Then there is a movement due to ground settlement, and the direction of the arrow indicates the direction of the movement. There would be movement in the building due to seismic activity, and the direction of arrow indicates the omnidirectional movement in the case of seismic event. I'll be just playing a short clip showing the omnidirectional movement in case of seismic joint and how of seismic joint minimize the damage to the joining structure. So the reason for joint sealing is to ensure watertightness as a part of waterproofing, then to ensure fire resistance that may be required by law, to have air tightness, to have energy saving, and for sound insulation. The structural reason may be to allow movement and design. Based on the function, broadly speaking, the joints can be classified into two categories. First is movement and expansion joint, where high movements are expected, and this is often across same substrate, and typically it will be between the joints of a precast elements. You see the reinforcement does not pass over the movement joints. Then you have a connection joints where little or no movement is expected, and it is mostly across different substrate, and typically it is between windows and the concrete panel or the and wall to wall and wall to ceiling. Now, to select a right sealant, we need to know the basics of sealant first. Material available for joint sealing can be classified into two categories. One is filled molded sealant and a preformed sealant. So in case of filled mold sealant, you have a liquid or paste-like kind of material that goes into the joint and it cures and then hardens. In case of preformed material, you have a solid material which is fitted into the joint or it can be applied over the joint. Further, This film-molded sealant can be classified into thermoplastic and thermosetting material. And this classification of thermoplastic and thermosetting is based on the behavior of a polymer when exposed to heat. So in case of thermoplastic material, when it cures, there is no cross-linking of polymer chain, and when it is exposed to heat, the material soften or melt, and in absence of heat, again it solidifies without changing its property. In case of thermosetting, when the material hardens after curing, there is a cross-linking of polymer chain, and even in the presence of heat, the material remains in a solid state. In this presentation, we'll be discussing about thermoset chemical curing sealant, namely polysulfide, PU, and silicon, which has got many USP over the other material. To understand about the sealant would entail the knowledge of multiple disciplines like chemistry, mechanics, and physics. Chemistry-wise, sealant can be PU, STP, polysulfide. When it comes to mechanical part, one need to know whether the sealant is elastic or plastic based on that elastic recovery properties. With regard to physics, one need to know about joint types. Further, the intersection of this discipline would form a sub-discipline which would cover joint design, science of adhesion, polymeric material, and surface science. If you see the typical cross-section of a joint, you will find you have substrate which can be a concrete, stone, or metal, a backer rod which should be a closed cell PE foam, then a primer and the sealant. The first step in joint design is to calculate the movement of building element by using linear thermal expansion formula, which we have used in our school days, which is very simple. That is, the change in length of a building element can be calculated or is directly proportional to the original length of the material and the change in temperature. And alpha is the coefficient of linear thermal expansion. So if the building element is of 10-meter length and is exposed to temperature ranging from -5 to 45 degrees Celsius, then the change in length or the movement across joint would be around 6 mm by using the formula. Now the second step involved in joint design is to use the MF, that is movement accommodation factor of movement capability data. And this information is provided by sealant manufacturer, which help designer in designing the dimension of joint. Now MF indicates the amount of movement between maximum compression and maximum expansion which sealant can accommodate and is expressed as a percentage of minimum design joint width. Now this MAF is so important for joint design, and you can think it is equivalent to or how important workability in designing the new concrete. So once you have MAF data, the theoretical design width formula would be calculated moment divided by MAF. Just for small example, if the calculated moment across joint is 6 mm and MAF is plus minus 25, then theoretical design width would be 24 mm. Again, from the formula we understand, if the MAF of sealant is more, the width of joint would be less. But here, the specifier and designer need not go always for sealant with higher MAF. What would happen? This would reduce the margin of error and it would put undue pressure on a builder to work within the construction allowance. And now, considering the same above example, if the specifier or the designer while designing the joint, has considered the MAF of plus minus 25, and at the site, the contractor has applied a sealant having a lesser MAF, then it would lead to a falling failure, where you have a cohesive and adhesion failure. Now, taking the input from the previous two slides, so the joint between the precast elements can be calculated by first calculating the movement due to thermal expansion between the two panels, which is highlighted in the yellow box. And after calculating this movement due to thermal expansion, then we use movement accommodation factor to calculate the design width. Some qualitative consideration need to be given in designing a joint. One need to ensure that the sealant is not pulled flush to the precast panel, because this would lead to faster deterioration due to high UV exposure. And joint width is not uniform, this would not look good aesthetically. The recessed seal give a proper protection from UV light. The consequence of wrong joint design, if the sealant is too deep, then it becomes rigid and there would be high stress on substrate and there would be adhesive failure. And in case sealant is sealed very shallow, then there is a chances of cohesive failure. And next is understanding the importance of sealant geometry with regard to the performance of the sealant. In case if the depth of sealant is twice the width, then the maximum strain is 94% for the extreme fiber in elongation, and it is around 200% for compression. Now, if the depth of sealant is equal to the width, then the strain reduces to 62%. And when the depth is reduced one half the width, further strain is reduced by 32%. So we can draw a conclusion by reducing the depth, you are reducing a strain, and that is why the ideal ratio for sealing is 2:1. Now, sealing the precast joint. Now, depending upon how the joints are sealed, the precast joints can be classified into following types. First is face sealed one-stage joint. Very simple. The sealant is applied on the external side, and the sealing for both air and water penetration is provided by the sealant. The minimum gap should be 15 mm and the maximum should be 30 mm. What are the advantages of this method? First is the lowest cost, and it is widely used for this reason. It can be readily inspected, repaired and replaced. It is best for low-rise construction. Panel edges can have simple profile. Disadvantages: it has to be applied with external scaffolding. Sealant is exposed to UV light, so there will be a faster deterioration. And another important disadvantage is that there will be pressure drop may occur across one-stage joint when there is a wind-driven rain during a storm, and water can seep through this micro or tail end cracks. Second type would be face sealed two-stage joint. Here you have extra line of defense. You are building a redundancy in the system by providing a sealing from the inside as well. Okay, so the outer side you have a primary sealant which is exposed, and this would deteriorate faster than the inner sealant. Secondary sealant which provides air barrier. Okay, so it is not exposed to UV light. The important thing one need to note in this type of sealing is there should be a weep opening in the outer seal. Okay, this would allow to have a pressure between the seal equivalent to the outside pressure. Drawback of this method: the failure to provide weep opening would result in water getting trapped between the both the seal, and it will lead to a faster deterioration. Third type is open drain. Here, one provides a baffle which may be made of neoprene or PVC, which is loosely fitted in the expansion chamber, and the water, when it hits the baffle, it drains over the baffle. Uh, and for the inside, you provide a sealant which also act as a air barrier. Advantages: the rear sealant, which is applied from the interior, it is protected from UV light. This can be installed from inside of the building, and it's good for medium and high-rise building and can tolerate large movements. Disadvantages: skilled applicators required for installation. Last type is having a compression seal, that is sealing for both air and water penetration is provided by preformed, pre-compressed polyethylene foam, which is inserted into the joint. You can see the vertical and the horizontal section. Advantages: it's simple and quick to install. It's just like providing a gasket around the panel. But drawbacks: maintaining a compression on seal at the intersection of vertical and horizontal is difficult. It cannot be fully waterproof, so limited to low-rise industrial building, because this polyethylene foam, it suffers from compression set and it doesn't offer resiliency. So that is why it cannot be fully waterproof. Now, location of joints: one need not stagger vertical joint, as this would lead to a staining and stress on sealant. Second, one need to avoid vertical joints between panels through openings. You see it is encircled in the red color. This type of uh, joint location should be avoided. Again, the joint need to be provided when the wall thickness changes or where there is change in height. Now, selecting the right chemistry for the sealing job. In this table, you will find various chemistry that has been rated depending upon the suitability for particular application. So if you see the yellow box for the precast, the various chemistry has been rated. First, rating of 1 means not recommended, and rating of 4 would be an excellent. So latex, acrylic, and butyl is strict no-no for the precast joint. Polysulfide would fare poorly, and the best choice would be silicon and PU. Now, how this rating has been given? If you just look for the properties of this different chemistry, you'll find polyurethane having maximum movement capability, that is having highest percentage elongation compared to other chemistry. It is having more elastic recovery. It can adhere to damp substrate, and it is paintable. Life expectancy one can expect from 10 to 20 years. So in case if someone is going for a modified mortar for filling a joint, so one need to know what to expect. So there would be no movement across the joint. It would be adhering good to the concrete, but it will surely fail in the short run. The popular standard in the classification of sealant is ASTM C920, ISO 11600, and EN 15651. And in this standard, there are few important tests which is important from the specifier point of view. First is ASTM C719 and ISO 7389. Now, sealants are classified in ISO 11600 into two broad categories. Type F is for the building construction sealant and type G is for the glazing sealant. In the building construction sealant, further, there are 7 classes based on movement capability of the sealant. And based on elastic recovery, that is in case if the elastic recovery of a sealant is less than 40%, then it is notified as a P. It comes under plastic sealant. And if the elastic recovery is more than 40%, then it comes under elastic sealant. The next important property that one need to look out is tensile second modulus. Okay, and this would loosely equate with the hardness of sealant when it cures. And when the sealant temperature or when a temperature drops, the modulus of the sealant increases. So in case if one is selecting a high modulus sealant for a substrate which is very weak, then there is high chances of failure due to adhesion. As per ASTM standard, the sealants are classified based on types, that is whether it is single or multiple component, grade, whether porable, non-sag, and 5 classes based on movement accommodation factor or movement capability. Based on the use, the suffix is added to the sealant classification. One of the important test method in ASTM C920 is C719. Now, this is an important test, and the specifier need to appreciate that rigorous testing the sealant goes under cyclic movement to evaluate the performance of the sealant. Okay. So this is the apparatus for testing the sealant for cohesive and adhesion failure under cyclic movement according to Hockman cycle. So you have a C clamp and the compression extension testing machine with a console unit, and this test is performed in a various scenario. It is extended to minus 25 to plus 25, and the temperature to which is tested ranges from minus 26 degrees Celsius to 70 degrees Celsius. The traveling speed of the compression extension testing machine is 3.18 millimeter per hour, and the pass criteria is that should be less than 50% failure, and the duration of test may take approximately around 2 months depending upon the class of sealant. Now, what is the right application time for the sealant? If you consider a hypothetical scenario, the sealant is applied at temperature of minus 29 degrees Celsius and the sealant width is W. Now, when the temperature reaches 13 degrees Celsius, the gap has closed and the sealant width has reduced to 2/3. Further, when the temperature increases to 54 degrees Celsius, the width of sealant is reduced to 1/3. So what you're finding is sealant is getting compressed by 66%, and there is a high probability of permanent deformation. Another scenario, if the sealant is applied at very high temperature. So at the time of application, the width is W. When the temperature further drops to 13 degrees Celsius, the width extends to twice, and when it further drops to minus 29 degrees Celsius, it has to extend by thrice the original width. So sealant is extending by 200% in service, and there will be sure failure due to adhesion and cohesion. Steps in sealant application, very simple. One need to use grinder, wire brush for surface preparation, install a closed cell backer rod, and used a backer rod tool to insert the sealant. Then have a masking tape, apply a primer, and fill the joint, avoiding entrapment. I'll be playing a video showing the installation and testing of a sealant at a site in India. It's better to use a power gun, battery operated gun. You can see the engineers are testing for the water ingress from the inside when the water is being sprayed on the precast panel slab. This is a simple test which one can do at the site, but in case if it is a precast septic tank, one can go for a vacuum test and find whether there is a pressure drop. Further, a high-rise building precast concrete panels can pose a serious safety hazard when fire occurs and which damages the panel connection. One can provide linear seal and penetration seal to have a fire compartment which will prevent the spread of fire and smoke in the particular area. So linear seal can be provided between the doors and the concrete panels. It can be provided between the two panels from the inside. Then you have penetration seals. You can have fire resistant mortar. You can have insulation board. You can have wraps and collar to create a fire compartment. Now, as per National Building Code of India, the fire rating of precast joint system shall be higher or at least equal to the connecting member, and it should be approximately around 2 hours. Some of the typical failure or causes of sealant failure: you have a left-right failure pattern, there is adhesion failure on concrete, and this is because of poor surface preparation. Second, you can see the bubbles on the sealant surface. Soon after the application, the sealant was applied under moderate weather condition, and this is due to closed cell backer rod which got damaged during installation, and the bubbles formed resulted in outgassing. So one need to use a backer rod roller to insert the sealant. Another typical failure, you see the paint film getting cracked because paint film won't be having similar elongation compared to the sealant. And lastly, one of the most important maintenance items for precast panel is the sealant in the joints. And the time frame for the sealant and surface protection maintenance varies from 7 to 20 years. So to avoid such kind of maintenance, one need to properly design the joints, select the right material, and do the right application. One can refer the following codes and guidelines to study in detail. This is it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ritesh. That was quite an interesting take on sealants, and I would say their use for sealing various aspects of precast construction. So I think we can move over to question and answer. I would actually, can I request both of you to also check into your chat box, because I just have two questions out here. The first one is to Pushpam.
Yeah,
Pushpam, are you there online?
yeah.
Yeah, Pushpam. So the first one is by Mr. Ravindra Babu.
Yeah.
He asks, how important is fatigue testing of grout in precast usage, and
Yeah.
why generally consultants do not mention that in the specifications?
Yes. This particle test is generally done for those structure where the dynamic forces are high. Like when we see precast construction, especially in buildings, which is static in nature. Structures like box girder construction, precast box girder construction, or wind towers, where the dynamic forces are very high, there definitely the fatigue test is very important parameter. But in case of precast building construction, where the dynamic forces are almost negligible, these are static in nature, so the fatigue testing is not very important parameter for precast building structure. The another question was the flow test. Generally, like for flow test, there are two methods. One is the Kaplan method, which ASTMC 109 suggests, and there is another test method, which is the Marscon method, which is ASTMC 939. Therein, a volume of grout has to pass through the mass core in a time frame like 35 seconds. But that is generally suggested for fine aggregate, like where the size of the particles are very small. Generally, flow cone test is done for neat cement slurry, where like for cement injection grouting we use. For neat cement slurry, we go with Mars core, but where we go for a grout, generally we follow ASTMC 109, which suggests flow cone test.
Okay, so I think that covers those two.
Yeah.
Then there was another one question. This is from Mr. Sharad Autade. What is your view on expansion joint treatment, which are subjected to high movement due to vehicular movements on top?
I think Ritesh can answer this
Yeah,
question.
I think that's much more from the.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question is, what is the view on expansion joint treatments subjected to traffic movements? Basically, expansion joints, where there is
Yes.
vehicle traffic on top of it, like maybe in podiums or places like that, driven on
Can
some.
one can go for preformed sealing solutions. You can have a tape system. You can have a pre-compressed foam, which can be fixed over the expansion joint, and it would have a aluminum plate or steel plate, which can take the vehicular load. So one can have those kind of solutions.
Okay. So I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm just getting a few more questions here. This is by Mr. Anil Belani. What is the best method to avoid cracking in paint over the sealant? Do sealant manufacturers prescribe paints compatible with their sealants?
Best thing I would say it is to avoid painting the sealant. Okay, sealant has a percentage elongation of 800 to 1000%. The most of the paint film it can bridge 2 or 3 mm cracks. Okay, so best thing would be to avoid painting the sealant. You have a sealant which can match the particular color. Even if preformed sealant, you get matching the your uh, building color.
Correct. So that is there. Then there is another question by Mr. Ranjan Verma. It says, suggest expansion joint systems in high temperature areas of size 60 mm. So I'm not sure what is meant by high temperature areas. But do you have an answer for that, Ritesh?
Uh, you can go for a ferreted joint. Okay, first is 60 mm. The film molded sealant won't work. So one has to go for this preform thing, which
Yeah.
is having a good fire rating. Okay, so lot of options is available in the market, which is having a rating of 2 or 4 hours, having UL certification, which conforms to uh, EN 1366 standards. okay, and so on. So you can have a fire rated expansion joint covering 60 width.
Correct. That's, I think, that works better as opposed to like a liquid applied one,
Yeah.
100%. So another question is this again by Mr. Ravindra Babu. What about the hydrolysis test in specifications? Why not in?
Hydrolysis test, okay, if the sealant is subjected to, okay, there is standing water, okay, then there is a chances that sealant will swell or it will soften, okay. it, it is particularly true in case of road joints. One need to do this hydrolysis test. But for the precast structure, one can skip that in the specification. So it is a simple test. What one does is to just observe after some days whether the sealant has deformed when it is immersed in water. Okay.
Correct. It's also, I think, depends a bit on the drainage part of it, like whether it's on the
So
vertical.
that is relevant to the road project, road joints, pavement joints.
The next question we have again is from Mr. Sharad Autade. In Tremix floor, is any grout available to fill gaps?
What kind of gap? Like the joints?
Yeah, in a Tremix floor, yeah, I would think so.
I think instead of grout, the sealant should be used in Trimix floor joint because the joints are cut to form by saw cut, and then sealant should be used into it.
Okay. I think the next one is a very pertinent question. I think a lot of people would ask that. This is from Mr. Ketan Desai. It says, which type of sealant can be used at the joint of an AAC block masonry and beam bottom? That means basically at a masonry RCC interface, I would think so.
Uh, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
What type of sealant can be used at the joint of AAC block masonry and bottom, or at a beam bottom? Means basically at the RCC and the masonry interface.
One can use a normal sealant, acrylic, or maybe the pure sealant
Okay.
between those joints, because that joint would be a kind of moving joint that will moving. Okay, so that can address that issue. If you're using a rigid material, again the crack would appear. So normal sealant would suffice the job.
Okay. So I think that pretty much answers that. Then the next one is how to avoid cracks in grouts. I think this is from Mr. Pushpam.
Yes, curing is something which is very important. First point is I mentioned about the pre-wetting of the substrate and the SSD condition of the substrate. In case of the substrate is highly absorbent, there are very high chances that the water from the grout will get sucked. And when the water is sucked from the grout will have cracks. Second aspect is the curing part. When the grout is done, it should be covered from protection against any kind of temperature, or it should have a proper curing. So if we take care of these two aspects, there should not be any kind of cracking. I have another question from Mr. Ranjit Jha. His question is, what is the maximum length for which grout can be done? We have 25-meter length. Generally, these kind of, when we talk about grout in precast structure, these are the sleeves where the grout has to be filled and which is confined from all sides. Whenever we use grout on the open surface, like the machine base plate and all, definitely we have limitation in terms of the length. And in case of those kind of applications, the panel grouting is recommended. But in case of precast, these ducts are confined and the chances of water loss is very, very minimal. So there is no problem in case if the length is higher, like even 25 meter, there should not be any kind of problem when the grout is flowing inside the duct.
Perfect. That makes that's pretty good. The next, I think, last couple of questions we can take is this again from Mr. Sharad. For a 100 expansion joint, how will you treat? Which sealant would you suggest?
For 100 joint, again, any joint more than 2 inches, one need to go for preformed solutions. So
Yeah,
again, tape or pre-compressed foam. So there are a lot of options available in the market. If you just Google it, you'll find all the preformed
Yeah.
solutions.
That makes sense, Ritesh. And the last question I think which we can take is actually I'm not getting the context of this, but it says which grout is better for precast cracks filling. So I'm not sure whether we're talking still about the cementitious
I guess
grout.
Sunny, in case if it is a crack, grout should not be the best.
Ritesh, we can't hear you. Ritesh?
What I was saying, in case if it is a crack,
Yeah.
okay, the grout won't be the best solution. Sealant should be considered.
Okay. A sealant would be better in that case. So I think with that I'm done with questions at my end. Do you see anything in the chat box at your end as well?
No, I think this much of questions were there.
Okay, so I think that that was quite a good session. So made it very lively in the end. So with that, I would say thank you very much, Pushpam. Thank you very much, Ritesh. It was a great session. Looking at different aspects of understanding and treating joints. I think this is one of the key factors that we normally cracks. I mean, I would say that joints are one of the key factors that cause actually a lot of pains in building construction, as well as I would say in most places. So how we go about, or the approach that we go about looking to alleviate these kind of problems, I think it was very important. So thank you very much for sharing with us. And I would also like to thank our viewers today evening. Thank you for staying with us. It's been I know it's a little bit longer than we anticipated, but a good session. Normally we look to exchange as much information as possible. So thank you very much for attending. Have a good evening, and we'll see you soon in mid July, around 17 July, with our next webinar series. So, thank you, everyone. Have a good
Yeah.
evening, and see you soon.